You'd think that a nuclear reactor exploding would be pretty hard to miss, but they say no, it was just a hydrogen tank going pop, the radiation levels are safe, it's nothing to worry about. They don't want to face the facts because that might mean that they are responsible. The Soviets kind of had their own version of fake news. They called it alarmism. And a lot of the people who say, no, look, the reactor has clearly exploded, there's radiation spewing out, if we don't do something about it, all of Europe is going to end up uninhabitable, they get dismissed as alarmists.
Look, that's graphite on the roof. The whole building's been blown open. The core's exposed.
I can't see how you can tell that from here.
Oh, for God's sakes. Look at that glow. That's radiation ionizing the air.
Well, if we can't see, we don't know.
Seymour! The house is on fire!
No, Mother, it's just the Northern Lights.
The protagonist of the series, Professor Valery Legazov, is portrayed as being the one sane man trying to contain the disaster before it's too late. As the old saying goes, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is called a virtue signaler and a sight cuck. In terms of who gets the most bad guy coded screen time, the show seems to be leading us towards suspecting this dude, Anatoly Dyatlov, as being the main culprit. He was in charge on the night and he made a bunch of very dangerous decisions which created the conditions for the accident. And according to both the show and several distinguished historians, he was also a massive f***ing dickhead.
Shut the f*** up and do your job. What did you do? Found out where. How the f*** did you get this job?
And this chick comes up to me and she's all like, hey, aren't you that dude? I'm like, yeah, whatever.
I apologize.
Although, the show also demonstrates that it's not entirely Dyatlov's fault. In real life, they were running a safety test when Chernobyl exploded. So a lot of the usual fail-safes had been turned off as part of it. And Dyatlov was under pressure from his bosses to just get it done so they could all get promoted. But it had to be delayed, and then there was a shift change, so the new guys coming in didn't really know what they were doing. There was also a crucial design flaw with the reactor that caused it to explode when they pushed the emergency shutdown button. And even though a lot of scientists actually knew about that design flaw for years beforehand, it had been covered up by the government. Depending on how you read it, you could also say that the show blames socialism a little bit. Creator Craig Mazin has said that he wanted to tell a story about lies, which he says is relevant to contemporary America as much as it is Soviet Russia. But some commentators have jumped at the chance to read a more partisan message into it, especially since usually about once per episode, some character all but turns to camera and goes, "Did you know the Soviet Union was bad?"
I'm a nuclear physicist. Before you were deputy secretary, you worked in a shoe factory.
Yes, I worked in a shoe factory. And now I'm in charge. To the workers of the world.
And that is the outlook espoused by Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn.
So Chernobyl poses some interesting philosophical questions about responsibility and people's relationships to the societies they live in. And in case you think this is just like a one-time event that can't teach us much now, there are a lot of parallels between the Chernobyl nuclear disaster and, say, the American AIDS crisis of the 1980s. It's another scenario where scientists were fighting against an invisible enemy and the government didn't want to listen, so people died. Or, kind of an obvious parallel, I guess, climate change. Something a little closer to home for me, though. The Grenfell Fire. In 2017, a tower block in Kensington caught fire and 72 people died. Kensington's a pretty posh bit of London, but the tower was mainly social housing, so there's a lot of people from low-income families and a lot of people of colour. It was later discovered that the outside of the tower was covered in flammable cladding that allowed the flames to spread way beyond what the interior was designed to cope with. That cladding had been installed the year before, and the reason they went with the flammable one is the local council had outsourced management of its social housing to another body who decided that the flammable stuff was cheaper. Despite being warned that it was dangerous, and despite the residents of the tower saying for years that the fire safety measures were inadequate. All of that occurred against the background of Conservative and Liberal Democrat governments cutting public spending in response to the 2008 financial crash, a group of policies known as austerity. Some of the survivors were reluctant to speak up for fear of being deported, which exists against the background of my country having gotten very hostile to migrants in the last few years. And as of April this year, some survivors still hadn't been rehoused, and some towers still have that flammable cladding on. Just like the Chernobyl disaster was in the minds of some people a symbol of the late Soviet Union, the Grenfell fire became a kind of symbol of contemporary Britain.
Is this really the way it all works? An uninformed, arbitrary decision that will cost who knows how many lives made by some apparatchik, some career party man?
Also, just as a side note, this doesn't really have anything to do with the philosophy, but the acting in this show is really good, especially the physical acting. A lot of people think acting for camera just happens in shots like this, from the shoulders up, or sometimes close up and extreme close up, because that shows you what we in the acting industry call the face, technical term, but really, acting takes your whole body. Look at this scene here. Even with the audio removed, you can tell so much about the characters just from their body language. And this great, cute little moment where Professor Legazov doesn't know where to stand. The actress had a dedicated movement coach, Imogen Knight, and she did so f***ing good. Oh, you know what else is excellent? The casting. Look at this quick scene where Legazov is buying cigarettes and he meets a character who we've never seen before and who we never see again. This guy right here, he's only in this series for like 4 seconds. He has no lines, just this one shot, but you only have to look at him and you know he's a KGB agent. He has the most KGB ass face of any motherfucker I've ever seen. I looked him up. His name is Simonos Davidauskas. Simonos, mate, you f***ing nailed it. Also, one last thing, I promise. The direction. There are a lot of shots in this where it looks like they didn't use a tripod. Like, I think these shots are handheld. You can see how the frame moves around. In this scene, Emily Watson's character, Ulana Komyuk, is trying to convince Professor Legazov to do something dangerous where they don't know what the outcome will be. The characters are emotionally unsteady and visually unsteady within the frame. Whereas here, at the end, when Legazov and Shabina are more secure in their friendship and at peace with what's going to happen to them, the shots are locked off. It's the little details like this that really make the show worth watching.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Does it make sense to say that the Chernobyl disaster was the fault of Soviet society? Or that the Grenfell fire was the fault of this one? One of the potential problems with saying that is that it might let people who are more guilty off the hook. Like, isn't Dyatlov obviously more responsible for Chernobyl than society? If we start believing in collective responsibility, then how can we ever say that one person is better or worse than anybody else? We've lost the whole basis of moral judgment. That's actually the question posed by a very famous scene in the film Judgment at Nuremberg.
Germany alone is not guilty. The whole world is as responsible for Hitler's Germany. It is an easy thing to condemn one man in the dark. It is easy to condemn the German people, to speak of the basic flaw in the German character that allowed Hitler to rise to power. But at the same time, comfortably ignore the basic flaw of character that made the Russians sign pacts with him, Winston Churchill praise him, American industrialists profit by him. Ernst Janning said, he is guilty. If he is, Ernst Janning's guilt is the world's guilt.
And so isn't the only answer to keep the blame with individuals? Yes, Dyatlov was under pressure, but isn't he an adult with free will, not just a cog in a machine? Just 1 year after the real Nuremberg trials, the philosopher H.D. Lewis wrote, "If there are no such distinctions, if the questions we ask about them are without substance, then the greater part of ethical controversy has been a peculiarly vain pursuit of a will-o'-the-wisp." I love the flair for the dramatic that a lot of those early 20th century British philosophers had in their writing. That's just such a will-o'-the-wisp. It's such a nice little sentence. Although, maybe collective responsibility isn't as weird as it seems. The philosopher Farid Abdel-Nur points out that people say stuff like, "We won the war," "We put a man on the moon," "We beat Tottenham 1-0, when actually as individuals we didn't have anything to do with it. And if we can take pride in our nation or our team's accomplishments, why not also take responsibility for their failures? The psychologist Daniel Kahneman pointed out that we do something kind of similar with companies as well. If you have a bad experience where a representative of, say, Ryanair is rude to you, people will often say, "Ryanair was really rude to me." We hold the whole collective responsible. But is that the same thing? Just because we can feel proud